First off, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know the weather conditions aren't exactly ideal, but thank you for coming out. So, to call to order, this meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this special meeting was transmitted to the Times of Trenton, the Star-Ledger on February 22nd, 2024, posted on the Township website, the Municipal Building Bulletin Board, and filed with the Township Clerk as required by law. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
David Bond.
Here.
Chad Bauer.
Here.
Susan Lockwood. Here. Joseph Bogie.
Here.
Mayor Walt.
Here. Resolution 24-75, authorizing application for full year 2024 local recreation improvement grant. This is a grant that we're applying for from the DCA that we could approximately receive up to $100,000 towards this project. And the nice thing about this particular grant is that if you have a park plan in place, it increases the possibility of it actually getting granted to you. So with that being said, if I could have a motion and a second for resolution 24-75, please.
I'll make a motion to move resolution 24-75.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion?
Can I just say that it actually, you said to carry out this plan, but it actually says carry out phase 2, rehabilitation of basketball courts and tennis courts. It does not say this plan overall,
Okay, well, part of the plan, my apologies.
just as a clarification.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none, we do a roll call. Roll call, please,
Okay.
Diana.
David Bond.
Here.
Yes or
Oh, yes.
no? Chad Bauer.
Yes.
Susan Lockwood.
Yes.
Joseph Bogie.
Yes.
Mayor Walt.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we're going to move on to the park, what everyone's here for, the park plan presentation. I have some prepared remarks I'd like to read very quickly. 3 years ago, this coming November, the township posed a public question and asked you, the voters of Delaware Township, whether the township could use 2 cents of the 6-cent open tax collected on capital improvements to the township-owned properties, including and ultimately starting with Dilts Park. You, the voters, answered with a resounding yes by nearly a margin of 3-1. In the spirit of that mandate, this committee began the process of interviewing for and eventually hired a professional park planner. Mr. J.D. Felicis of Collier's Engineering has graciously availed his time to meet with all of us this evening. The committee tasked Jay to develop the master plan that could address the playing field and court safety issues and disrepair, non-ADA compliance issues for our restroom facilities and other social areas, and dated parking and traffic flow allowances. We asked Jay to consider using the changes required to address these safety and code-related issues to supplementally enhance the overall beauty of the park and its invitation to passive recreational activities, while at the same time allowing township children a safe place to play and participate in team sports that are vital for physical and social development. This committee also promised 3 years ago that we would make any decisions regarding the park a transparent and public process that would allow for resident feedback and questions. Those comments and suggestions made by you, the public, this evening and at future township committee meetings will be utilized by Jay to tweak and refine his iterative version of Dilts Park into its final form. Jay has developed what I believe to be an incredible vision of what Dilts Park could be for the current residents and future generations alike. As a committee member, a resident, and as a father who spent many weekends at the park, I'm excited for you to see his vision this evening too. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
Good evening. As the mayor said, my name is J.D. Fleece. I'm a landscape architect and planner. I specialize in doing parks and recreation planning, have done so for a couple decades now, and have successfully built projects.
Hey, I'm sorry, can you, I don't know if the
Yeah,
mic
I'm
is
gonna turn the
working.
mic on for you.
Let's see if we can get a little volume on there.
Testing? Okay.
There you go.
Sorry.
Is that better? Okay. I've designed parks all over the state, in Pennsylvania and Connecticut. So this is kind of what I do for a living, and kind of what I do as a specialty. Initially, I have to say this piece of property is beautiful. Dilts Farm, the property itself is a lot of times when I'm doing park planning, they'll give me a field somewhere, or they'll give me a little lot somewhere. This is just a beautiful piece of land. Whether it was ultimately suited to be a recreation park, there's a little issues. It's got some slopes to it and things that don't necessarily allow it to be, 10 soccer fields laid out, but that gives it interest too. The fact that how the water moves, how the plantings, the hedgerows that were planted decades ago, and none of these plans attempt to take any of that away. The idea is how to work with what's out there now and kind of bring it up to date, and then do the enhancements that can serve the community moving forward. I did the initial thing that I did was an evaluation of the park, just looking at it, and from my experience and my background, and knowing how the rules have changed over the years. When the park was probably initially developed, there was no such thing as ADA accessibility. That wasn't an issue. But this is the world we live in now, that everything should be ADA accessible. Everything should be able to be used by everybody. And that's kind of the thought process going through both the evaluation and the kind of conceptual ideas. We noticed a couple things. And I'll just go through these. They're in the first panel. Lack of definition and separation of vehicles and pedestrian areas. So it doesn't. The first thing I noticed at the park is there's parking areas, and then there's parking areas. So there's no real way to get from the parking lot to the baseball field, or the parking lot to the the playground's closed, but there should be some type of an internal circulation system, and you'll see that in the concept of trying to develop some trails which can serve a number of different purposes. A lot of times when we do Parks and Rec surveys, the two things that we get back anymore, are people want safe walking trails and people want safe playgrounds. So that kind of thought process and the idea of trying to make the park feel safer, separate the cars from the people, make sure that the walkways connect to the uses. That's kind of the thought process. Right now, as you all know, the driveway comes up through the middle of the park, and then you go off in different directions, and there's no real separation. But one of the things that I thought was telling was that people had a tendency to park wherever they wanted, which is also not something you want to do going forward. I noticed people would just pull off and park, or, I also noticed there is that third accessory driveway that comes up through an area which personally I believe should be a garden park area. I know it's wet over there, but you have one main entrance, and then you have one secondary entrance over on the far left side, which I guess is to the soccer field. The secondary entrance is a good entrance from a visibility standpoint. If you're at that spot, you can see both ways up the road. So that's a good spot for people to be pulling in and pulling out of. You have a lot of visibility. The main entrance drive is kinked. Doesn't meet Buchanan Road at a 90 degree. That's not usually the best. You want people to be able to come up, stop, and make a turn either way. Second thing I covered already, which is a general lack of ADA accessibility. I did look at the existing restroom and snack stand, and they're not accessible. The doors are too small. There's certain gradients that need to be done. There's no walkways, paved walkways. And when I say paved, everyone has to understand it doesn't mean paved. There are a number of products that we use in parks which are crushed stone. We use a lot on trails as a crushed stone with a limestone mix. Now what that does is it allows the stone to bind up some, but it still allows it to be porous and let the water through, but it also allows somebody on in a wheelchair or a walker or a mother with a baby carriage to push it. So it serves a lot of different purposes, but also is still porous. So we're not doing anything, understand the intention is not to do anything to pave the park. That is not the goal. The goal is that the park should be as natural as possible, as much infiltration as possible. We know there's a grade change there. We know that kind of coming right down through the middle is a drainage swale. I'll talk about that when we get into the next. We know there's the pond down on the lower corner over by the soccer field. There's recommendations on that as far as that needs to be cleaned out, and it's full of Phragmites now and invasive species. But that's also something we'll talk about. The condition of well, this was touched on because the original grant that was given was to help try to redo the tennis courts and the basketball courts, and that's kind of where I came in, because we were looking at those and we don't know what's under there. They're cracking, and the way that they're cracking is not good. There are numerous methods of repaving, say, a tennis court or a basketball court, but if the base is moving and the base is not stable, it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it, and eventually the Band-Aid comes off. So as part of this, the idea was that, well, if we're going to do this, then we should build them right. Now, I don't know, I'm sure many of you have been in town for decades and all. I don't know when the tennis courts and the basketball court were built, but the standards for building them, today are more like 6 inches of stone, and then so that the paving can float on the stone as opposed to being on ground where it has a tendency to separate. So that's just kind of a background. I also noticed that some of the existing trees, particularly the ones to the left of the main entrance in that wooded area, are not in great shape. And that will also be part of something moving forward. Is I think some of them are ashes. Some you all may know more about that than I do. But with the amount of water that's coming down to the front, there's going to have to be a hard look at some of the existing trees moving forward, because I have a feeling there's a group of them that's probably not long for this world. And as opposed to creating a hazard, the idea would be to create a plan. And then the other thing is looking at the rest of the park. There are areas of the park that are kind of now not really in use, could be in use. We can look at that. Also understanding that I am aware that the town owns additional properties contiguous to this. This plan is only about the park area. Whatever happens on the other contiguous parcels is another whole plan. as far as how you get access to that, what's over there. This is only for the limits of Dilts Park. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, good. So from the evaluation, what I've been working on is some ideas of how we can kind of reorganize things without making too many changes. For example, nothing on the plan is intended to change the flow of water. Water comes from up here, water goes down here. There's a stream that runs here, there's a ditch that runs here, there's a pond over here. All of that is to remain. We're not changing the drainage of the site at all. What we'd like to do is the main swale, I did notice, gets a little bit of erosion in it. So the idea there was, how can we use that as a positive as opposed to a negative? And the idea was to come up, the idea is to come up with groupings of plantings where we could reintroduce some native species, things like birches, serviceberries, redbuds, and create habitat there that would also serve to help with the drainage, slow the water down, because I did notice that right now it runs through that rill, and on a good rain, I'm sure tonight, it's draining parts of the field up here, and I noticed it was starting to eat in. So the idea there is, how can we not make a structural element, but do it naturally? A way we could do something with stone, do something with plantings to help those areas become more naturalized. Similarly, the area that's to the right of the entrance, which right now I don't think really has a use, is a wonderful area where, in my mind, that's a wonderful area where a garden could be made, or numerous gardens could be made. It could be a passive seating area garden, it could be a meditation garden, it could be all different kinds of things. Here again, using native species. I'm very much an advocate of using native species, particularly in parks where we know that we're not going to have irrigation systems. And so, and as an aside, I mean, I had designed a native species park, and it's got to be almost 20 years old now, and everything's still alive and thriving because it belongs here. We're not bringing in cherry trees from China or things like that, palm trees. So that's kind of that ecological side of the park, how we can use what the park gives us in a ecological way to reintroduce native plantings. There are ways to do this. There are ways that we've used in the past where we just make an area a no-mow zone. And it's worked out pretty well because as long as you have birds and animals around, they'll spread the seeds, and it allows things to kind of renaturalize. I mean, what most people don't realize is that most of New Jersey was a forest before we all got here. And pretty much anything that's cleared now is cleared because some human cleared it. And left to its own devices, it probably becomes a forest again. And it's an interesting process over the course of years of allowing the succession of different plants to come through. You have early species, mid-species, late species. If you ever saw a beech grove, that's the climax. Beech and hickory is the climax of the forest before it starts all over again. But it's a constant cycle. As far as cars, so the idea here, and the first idea is that the third makeshift driveway gets closed. And then the main driveway gets squared to the road, and the main driveway comes in and comes into a parking area with parking on both sides. Right now, I measured that parking area at 55 feet. The standards for parking, particularly when people are buying larger vehicles these days, And any place you go to a shopping center or anything like that is 65 feet. So now the idea is to make the parking area sufficient for trucks, cars, everybody to use it. I have not seen it in use, but I can only imagine because it doesn't really have either sufficient backup area or it just doesn't work as it is laid out now. And it's not that big a deal. I mean, we only need to pick up 10 feet on one side or the other. So that is the first main change, is to reconfigure the main parking. The second is there's a baseball field. I hope everybody following me from their knowledge, but there's a baseball field over here that I understand is not really needed as a baseball field. So the second idea is that connect the two entrances. So now there would be a drive right before you go over the culvert to head up. There will be a drive that goes to the left. And that drive will connect over to the other parking lot. Yes?
That field's in use pretty often.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Softball uses it more than baseball.
Right, and that's what we did. And we're not getting rid of the field. We're just reducing, it's not going to be a 300 and some odd field. It'll be about a 250 field, which is more in keeping with what I understand the use is. The dimensions for a softball field are 225 unless you let these big guys on it and then they can hit it further. But the idea there is just to move that field over a little bit and make it so that we can have a drive. And the logic of this is that now we have both of the driveways connected and there's an internal circulation with cars on the edges of the property. My understanding is, there are annual events held at the park, and so the way that I've laid it out here is there's area on the other side of the drive for pulling off onto the grass on event parking. So trying to, think about as much as we can as far as knowing that there are times when maybe there's a lot of people in the park and there needs to be a lot of parking. But we don't really, here again, we don't want to really pave the whole park because that kind of goes against the whole thought process. So yeah, I mean, that was my understanding, is not used as a Babe Ruth baseball field.
That's correct.
Yes.
You mentioned using a crushed limestone and gravel substance for the walking trails. Could that also be used for the parking areas to limit runoff?
Yes. What I'm showing here, you'll see there's a darker purple and a lighter gray. The idea here is that the lighter gray could be porous asphalt or it could be regular asphalt. I've done a number of parks with porous asphalt, which here again allows the water to go through. The purple areas are intended to be stone. So the parking spots are stone. The problem you have we normally make the drive aisles of some type of hard surface, because particularly when you're turning a car, that's what makes the stones all go all over the place. So the drive aisle would be some type of either porous asphalt or regular asphalt. Even with regular asphalt, by doing the parking spots in stone, it would be graded so that the water would crown off the drive into those stone areas and infiltrate.
May I ask another question? You mentioned the stream that runs across the road. Yeah, that one. The neighbor across the street, Stone King, had trees going across Buchanan Road through their property because that stream continues on the other side of the road. Mm-hmm. So anything you can do to mitigate runoff would be valuable.
Yeah, and that gets into the whole idea of this area. This area can be wet, not really a usable area. It's right by the road. So yes, there's a possibility we could do something there where we create, you know, we've done, well, some people call them rain gardens, but not really rain gardens, but terrace types of garden areas that would allow the water that's coming down here to slow down and maybe infiltrate into some various types of basins. The difference between that and the pond down here is the pond is at the low spot. So there's, you know, this would actually be an ability to do something terracing down.
Hey, folks, real quick, if you don't mind waiting for Jay to make his entire presentation, there's plenty of ample opportunity for you folks to make comments and questions afterwards, so thank you.
So the thing about, so what we've done here, or what I've done here is I've showed a turnaround, because there's no real way to turn around. So, so what we've done is so that the parking area, I mean, I know, or, you know, I assume there are times when people will come and drop their kids off and leave again. So the idea is to make that accessible. And then, as I talked about, the tennis courts and the basketball court are to be reconstructed in place. And that's a logical place for them. The thing that, you know, when I was out there, the thing that I didn't sense was that there's no sense of you're there. You know, like, this is the park, this is the town park. So that was what spurred the idea of coming up with this central area. Now, the central area that I'm talking about would be basically everything on the right side of the drive. The playground, the small baby soccer field, and I guess, you know, that's where the snack shack and the restroom is. And the idea there, and you'll see a little sketch over here, but the idea there is to make a central park area. Now, this would be basically a community type of central park area where the play area would be in there, the small soccer field would be in there, the new restroom concession building would be in there. You know, we looked at the possibility of relocating the gazebo, but from contractors I've talked to, it's made out of wood, so their feeling is it's probably not going to be movable. So the idea was that maybe we have an area for a gazebo. And then you have your parking area along here, and the idea is that, and you'll see it in there, a low fence, so that now that's defining, you know, where cars are and where people are. And then this low, so all the, you know, this is the parking lot here, people pull in, they walk into the park, there's a fence here, you can let your kid go. It's a safe area. And it also provides an area, as I showed in there, an area, you know, maybe for a flagpole, maybe for a memorial area, maybe this is where you hold a ceremony on the 4th of July. You know, that's up to the community to program these things, but it creates for you a community space in a safe place in a beautiful park. And then not taking away, I mean, this will still be the baby soccer field. This will still be the playground. We're not taking anything away. Like, as I said, the idea is to enhance the park as much as possible. There are a couple things that I wanted to touch on too is the Field of Dreams has a drainage problem and it's facing in the wrong direction. So there are standards for fields. Baseball fields normally go north-northeast. Soccer fields usually go as much as they can, north-south. So what I've tried to do is do a reorientation of the Field of Dreams so that now instead of home plate being on the downside, home plate is up on the upside and it drains outward. Because there is another drainage swale that runs, as I'm sure you're all aware, there's another drainage swale that runs on this portion of the park. So it kind of makes sense that the field be tilted so it drains itself, as opposed to trying to push water uphill. Same thing happens over here on Dilts Field. There's a washout over here on the third baseline. As part of this project, the idea would be to regrade from right field to left field, because what's happening now is the water's coming down the hill and eating out the infield. By either dropping this or lifting this, we can get that water to move across that field while it's still in the outfield and not get into the infield. So that's just park design 101. The other thing I did do on this plan was, when we made the baseball field smaller, this is your best spot for your best soccer field. Right now, it's a bit undersized. There is some trees that are along here, and there's also a drainage swale that kind of comes behind here. I notice there's a pipe that goes underneath here. So this is the only place where I'm looking that by extending this field down, once we make this field a little bit smaller, we can make this a regulation size soccer field at 225 by 360 feet at, like 1%. It could be a beautiful, beautiful field right there. It is a field now. It's your best field now, but the idea was, when I started measuring things, I found out that it kind of comes up a little short on the dimensions of what you would want for a full-scale soccer field. So we can make that happen. That's not a big deal. So these three items are basically grading items, going in there and moving dirt around. And I don't think none of them is going to require, bringing in truckloads of dirt or, doing a whole lot of that type of thing. I think it's more a matter of resetting the grades, redoing some things. And this is why, once you take on the park, the idea is that, it makes more sense to do all the grading at one time and then get it all settled. And that, unfortunately, with the idea of a park, there's a cost to that, and that's a big front-end cost, is doing all the grading. So, everybody likes the bells and whistles, and you want to have, new playgrounds and all, but there's a cost to making sure that the bones of the park are regraded and fixed correctly.
Could you address the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the pickleball courts?
The pickleball courts. Okay.
That's why we're all here.
I always tell people, 10 years ago, no one knew what a pickleball court was, but it seems to be, and this is the thing, we don't know if pickleball is a trend or pickleball is here to stay. We do know that I've gone to numerous towns where the tennis people and the pickleball people are ready to fight each other. Sometimes they get along. Sometimes you can put pickleball on tennis courts and they don't, you can do something with timing or whatever. The biggest thing about pickleball is that people find the noise offensive. So what we proposed in here is there's a back parking lot. It's back by it's that area that's back by the bocce ball court. Does everybody know where that is? It's an asphalt area. It seemed like the logical place, and I measured it because I'm thinking, well, this could be perfect. It seems like the logical place that we could put a couple pickleball courts. Now, the good part about that is we do have some pines over on this side, but I show in the plan here that, knowing that we would do plantings on both the side of the tennis court and the other side of the pickleball of that area. Since we're moving the Field of Dreams over a little bit, that'll give us a little bit more room on the, call it the outside edge of that. So without having to do a whole lot of, grading, construction, trying to use that area as a pickleball, because as I said, no one knows if this is a trend that's going to last, or if this is something where, 10 years from now it'll be skate parks, and as I've noticed, a lot of skate parks are gone now. So, things like that. We notice that there are trends in recreation, and this just happens to be the trend right now.
So it's gonna be its own court, it's not dual purpose with the tennis court?
No, the tennis courts the difference is that pickleball doesn't need a 10-foot fence. It only needs like a 4-foot fence. So it's a lot less of a structure per se. And, you know, you
Is
can,
there a fence at all?
the idea was to go with a full.
Sorry, Jay. Could we just wait until the presentation's over and then you gotta come up to the podium and ask questions? We're just trying to mitigate and the time allotted to individuals, make sure everyone is heard before multiple people ask multiple questions, et cetera. So, you'll have plenty of opportunity to ask all your questions once the presentation's over, I promise. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Could you, discuss the distance between the pickleball courts and the nearest resident?
Yeah, the advantage of this location, besides the fact that it's already paved, is it's almost 650 feet to any property line. That's quite a distance. You know, a quarter mile is 440 feet. So it's someplace between a quarter mile and a half mile away from the.
Quarter mile is 1,300 square feet.
I'm sorry, 1,520, right. So the 625 feet, but it's also, this area is kind of tucked into the site. So, you know, it's pretty much central to the site. I mean, it's pretty much in the center of the park where it's proposed.
Committee members have any comments or questions that you'd like to ask Jay before we open up for public comment? Okay.
I guess that's good to do that.
So before we open it up, I just want to lay some groundwork for the public comment section. So there's a lot of folks present this evening, so we're going to use a modified format for our normal public comment period to ensure everyone has an equal amount of time. Please come up to the podium, state your name to the clerk, and please indicate whether you are a resident of the township or not. You will have a time 3 minutes each, and we will be strictly enforcing that limit. If you have previously spoken, we request that you withhold raising your arm, requesting further additional comment until all others have their one opportunity to speak. If there's sufficient time remaining to do so, we may allow for additional comments thereafter. So with that being said, who would like to come up first? Ma'am?
Good evening, my name's Nora, I am a resident.
First and last name?
Sorry, Nora, N-O-R-A, Nishan, N-U-C-H-A-N-I-C. That's it.
And
Thank you for this really thorough look at the park. I am really interested in the pickleball courts because right now I go to Soulbury, which happens to be closed. You know, I go to Pennington, I go to all these other places, and I would love to be able to play in my own town where my tax dollars go. Being sensitive to people, I understand, you know, the noise is an issue. It looks like, you know, you're thinking about that and how to mitigate that. And so 3 courts is great, and yabba dabba do. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? This is your opportunity to speak up, folks. Come on up. Sir.
Brent Swissler, yeah, you already got it, and I am in fact a resident. So I think the plan looks amazing. I really appreciate your work. I think the thoroughness and you can really see the amount of thinking that went into it and addressed to all of the other meetings that you guys had. I think that the entire team did a really great job. I would just like to advocate for every single sport that anybody can play. The kids get a great opportunity. I myself am a professional tennis coach. I grew up playing tennis on the courts at the Delaware Township court. Conservatively over 5,000 hours worth. that level of time investment in this day and age to try to secure like scholarship and those sorts of things for young athletes is necessary. At this point, it is ridiculously competitive. Take it from somebody that works, extremely hard to try to get those for the kids that I coach. While the pickleball stuff is, it comes off as somewhat invasive, I think it's set back from the perimeter and everything pretty far. I know from the tennis background and everything that there's a lot of people that are both interested in that, playing pickleball, going in between. I think the fact that there's separate courts for it alleviates a lot of conflict that I know other places could potentially have, so I think that that's a fantastic idea. I had one question. Are there spaces in between the pickleball courts?
Yeah. Well, understand that this is a concept, but yes, I used my best judgment, but yes, there should be room between each of the pickleball courts. The difference I found between the tennis standards and the pickleball standards is nobody tells you exactly how much room you need between them. So I think something else that needs to be researched a little bit further.
In closing, I think it's a fantastic plan. I appreciate the work that the town has done for it. I think the young athletes of this town are going to just really appreciate these opportunities. I know I did when I was young. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Everybody's clamming up. So I have a couple questions. For the bathrooms and snack shack, how big are we making that building? And would it just be those two things that would be in it?
Yeah, well,
I got a rendering, Jay, of the prefab
yeah, I
building.
do actually.
I mean, I can just
No.
say like
So
why I was
the
asking.
idea is that what we've done a lot of in a lot of parks is there's a company that there's a couple of these I can send around, but there's a company that builds these. Actually, they build them out of concrete, so they are a, and you've probably all seen them, but you don't really see them because they do a really nice job of, we've done them with stone, we've done them with brick, we've done them with, looks like barn board, and you can do different colors. But the idea is that this is a building that pretty much is prefabricated and comes in and it's dropped in place. And it would be able to have both the concession area, the sketch here shows the concession area opening out and then the restrooms on both sides. So now it's a area where the concession area and the restroom area is one building. I don't know, I mean, I understand from a historic aspect that the snack shack and the restroom have been there, but I don't really know how functioning they are at this point.
I don't think anyone will be upset if they go away.
Not
Especially
so
people that work at the snack shack. It's pretty bad. I mean, I was asking, I know I've mentioned it to you guys, but this space is gonna be a little bit smaller once the post office comes in. There's limited amount of space that we have in our town to host events. So I know at Clawson Park, they rent out their pavilion. They make a good amount of money that covers the recreation activities that they have there. So what if we made that building a little bit bigger and closed it, and then it's a space that we can use. We can rent it out. There's a tax credit right now, or a tax rebate, sorry, is that right now? If we wanted to put solar panels on the roof, and we could get 30% of that cost covered by the federal government, and then we own those panels, we can sell the SRECs. It's more of a way for us to create revenue for the town. So that was my one.
And I'll address that. The sketch that I show on there has a covered area. We've designed them where the covered area extends out further, and you can have a number of picnic tables or
Yeah,
whatever.
this is
and
beautiful. I think, yeah, this is really nice to have this outside space, because right now, the pavilion as it is really difficult to use if anybody has tried to because of the wind. It's just so windy there. There's so many days, like, even our plant swap, everything's like falling over because of the wind. So if we could have an enclosed area, I think that would be really helpful. I was also wondering about the expanded trails. Where would they be? Or is
Right,
that
so
for the
right-
other properties?
No, there's no, this is, as I explained, this is
Yeah.
only Sarah Dilts Farm Park. But right now, my times I've been out there, people come and park and walk up this middle trail along past the hedgerow, and that hedgerow's not really in great shape either. And then follow along behind the pines up along the top of the property and then come back down. The idea is that we'd like to develop a little bit more an internal circulation system so you have more options for walking through the park. That would also serve to try to provide accessible routes of travel from the parking areas to the uses, to the ball fields, to the tennis courts, to the playgrounds. The thing that over time, what's nice about this type of arrangement is that, and I learned this over time, there's a second group of users, and the second group of users is older people and moms. Now, they're out there at 10 o'clock in the morning, or they're out there when nobody else is out there. But, they really appreciate if you had a little kid on a tricycle or trying to teach them how to ride a bike, to have a safe area like this where you can still see them, and it's a paved area, and it's safe, and they can't get out into the parking lot. People end up finding uses for good spaces.
And then, so we have the Cub Scout, or the Eagle Scout that's supposed to be putting in the Gaga court.
It's right there, Jim.
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, so where he's putting it now, we would just keep it and work around it? That's what I'm asking, because he wants to put it in like in a month.
I know, he's
So-
when I was going through this, I was thinking, because I originally had the flagpole over by the gazebo and then moved it out front here, because I'm thinking over time there's a sign there. Give me a couple days, let me think about it.
Okay, I just want to get back to him because he's gonna start like in April, so.
I know, this may be the better spot for the flagpole, and he may be better off over here, and we can give him dimensions of where it can be.
Okay, yeah, I told him that we would mark it.
Yeah.
And then cost for phase one, do we have any rough estimates right now?
So, I was anticipating this question. So the plan has not yet been dissected into work orders that we could have potential contractors bid on that, right? And we may have our own DPW actually do some of the work as well. We do know what the cash flow is generated from the referendum allows us to explore various financing opportunities. But meanwhile, we're actively applying for various grant opportunities that fit the scope of this project that are available through both the state and county sources. So until we know, all of those variables, we're not gonna know. First off, we have to find out how much it's gonna cost us, and that's really a discussion we're gonna have with Chad. And then it's gotta go out to bid. And then we gotta find out what kind of financing does the referendum provide for us, because it is a fixed cash flow. We can go to bond potentially.
Yeah, what's in
for
our
that.
bucket now? Like 220?
So you know what the bucket is
40.
now?
But it's pretty close.
How much?
Okay. So, anyway, there's a lot of moving parts still. We're coming up with our annual budget right now, so we'll be working on everything, and then that will be phase two, is how much is this all gonna cost, and how do we plan on paying for it if we wanna move forward.
Okay, if anybody hears of grants, we'll let you know.
That'd be great.
I'll get back to you. Okay, yes, okay, thank you. Okay, and thank you guys. I think
You're
this
welcome.
really covers like a lot of demographics for our, our residents, so it looks very good.
Thank you. Sir?
Sure.
Ed McLaughlin, Township resident, Cemetery Road. That's about it, right? Thank you very much. So I'm very positive about the plans, actually. I mean, it's not a radical change. It adds a soccer field. That's like the most significant addition. And the playground area, that parkway, I think it's a good idea. I raised 2 kids in part at Dilts Park, in the playground area, so all in all, I think it's a very positive plan. I think the fact that you're getting grants, or applying for grants, is great. I was not thrilled at the use of the open space funds. Not thrilled, yeah, I voted in favor of it, but I think that's a good balance. Get as much grant money as you can to do this work. Use as little of the open space money as possible, so we can continue to apply it to open space. But I, for one, will mourn the loss of the snack shack. It is iconic. I spent my share of hours inside and outside of the snack shack cooking hamburgers. I think it may not be the best facility for delivering snacks to folks. What it does have to its advantage is that it is not a prefabricated building. So I know that a prefabricated building is, from a budget perspective, it's a very sound thing. From a visual perspective, it's a prefabricated building. So we're getting rid of this iconic little snack shack, putting in something prefabricated. Maybe there's some thought as to how there could be something that would be more fitting with the character of the township. Something that echoes the snack shack in some way. The bocce court? Is the bocce court gone? Oh, good. That means I still have a chance to use it someday. I have a small bucket list, and that's all. The pickle court, I have no skin in the pickle court game. I do think that would not be unreasonable to give it a 100-year rule. If the sport's been around and popular for 100 years, build a court. Pickleball's got 90 years to go, I think, before it's proven itself. But I ultimately have no skin in the game. I do have a thought, though, in terms of the sound. It does seem like it would be pretty straightforward to do a sound check. Do some recordings of a real, honest-to-God pickle court, and amplify it, and see if you're one of the folks, one of the neighbors in the area. If you can hear it, all right, well, that's an issue. But if you can't hear it, then maybe that settles that issue, right? So, anyway, those are all my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question to the crowd. Does anybody use the existing tennis court for pickleball?
Someone's just
We tried.
They're in poor
Just a
condition.
question.
Yeah.
In poor condition.
It's a good sound check, though. It is.
I'm thinking.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to thank everybody for the consideration also of updating the accessibility of the park, which is really, really important. I did have a couple of questions in regards to that. You mentioned expanding the doorway. Other thoughts would be, which is not a bad idea overall, but like a non-slip floor in the bathroom. Obviously the railings and a raised toilet. I'm not sure also how the building is going to be built, if it's just a general walk-in, or if you're going to have a push button for a wheelchair or somebody on a scooter. So that was just something extra as you're designing the building that would be important. And, I don't know what our accessibility needs are in the community, but there are also other things as far as things for deaf people, lights, special lights, visuals in case there's an emergency. And in regards to the pickleball courts, even though I do have an old spinal cord injury, I do love starting to practice it has become a lot of fun, and would plan also on using that. I always try to find a way to adapt my injury around things I still enjoy doing, so I would definitely find a way to enjoy pickleball. The gravel, my concern as using the park already, with my limitations, walking with a crutch, I do tend to walk pretty good and even sometimes faster than most people, but my issue with gravel a lot, or what's there, is I have to be vigilant all the time when I'm walking. My crutch does slip out on the gravel frequently. So I worry about the runoff. I know you're going to address a lot of the drainage issues. That creates, I think, a lot of the stone running off as it is right now, and then you have to replace it. There's a lot of weeds that are growing in the paths. I use this park all the time. It helps my physical activity, helps my pain. It just brings joy to my heart. It's a beautiful park. But I do notice when we're planning for accessibility more, I'm not sure if when we are putting in a 3, 4, 5 foot pathway with gravel, if there needs to be consideration of like some kind of an edging that keeps the gravel contained.
Are you familiar with the path that has the binder on
Are you talking about like the recycled products, rubbers?
No, it's like the product is, the way that the product is used is we put down a stone base and then they mix this product, which is like a granite, with stone and put it down and it hardens.
Yeah, so it's almost like a cement composite kind of, it just keeps it bound
But it's
firmer
poured,
together.
but the water
It's not
still
what
goes.
you are currently doing or what we are currently doing now. It would be a different
No,
system.
that's loose gravel.
Yes, then I don't know the formal name of that, but I have been in parks that do that. It tends not to spread out and wash out as easily in the shifting and because the drainage is important too. When I walk around certain paths on any given horrible rainstorm, and then I think we have some nice excavators that probably come and fix things once in a while, and but they tend to leave really significant ruts where I just always have to, instead of looking around the park when I'm walking, and that's part of my pleasure, my focus is always looking on the ground and stepping over those ruts and not tripping or stumbling. So the drainage is a really important issue with that. But other than that, I think Dilts Park is so beautiful. I'm so blessed to live in this community. I thank everybody. Even I think Martin Excavating has come and done some things maybe once in a while. All those people that keep this park beautiful, I appreciate so much. I would love to come down, sprinkle little seeds. Maybe you were talking also about possibly creating a garden, whether it's a little community garden, a flower garden. I would definitely participate in trying to help facilitate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Hold on, I did want to clarify one thing, particularly with regards to accessibility. I talked about having the drive aisles be paved and the parking areas to remain stone. But in certain places, we're going to have to put, like for example, this logical spot here, there's going to have to be a couple ADA accessible parking spots and a van spot there. So I mean, that's the refinement, but that's.
Thanks, Jay. Sir?
Justin Lax, I'm a resident, I live on Winterville headquarters, backing up to the park. I'll preface this by saying I own a company that plans and builds trail systems in public parks all over the country. I work all the time on park master plans, and I happen to back up to this park, so I have some biases and probably some knowledge that would be useful. My first question would be, what informed the program? I obviously, again, am biased. There's a lot of neat things for kids and families to do on bicycles today that are worth considering when you're building out a park like this. So how did we arrive at the conclusion that the things to be added were just a soccer field and pickleball courts. Was that based on?
Well, besides the main central use area, you know, from my evaluations, I mean, that park, as I said at the beginning, that park has some grade change to it. So it doesn't it's not, as I kind of tried to explain, it's not a farm field that we could just lay out soccer fields. The idea is to create safe space that people can use, so.
Yeah, I'm just asking how we decided what the things we wanted to add are. Was it just your opinion, or
No,
was it
I had talked to the recreation people, I talked to, you know, the town, and did some research as far as how many leagues you have. I mean, that's how I found out that nobody really plays Babe Ruth baseball. So those were informed by input I received from the town.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm a newish
The
resident.
Recreation Commission did a survey
Somebody
of what people
predated
wanted.
me. Anyways, I think we should consider adding some sort of family-friendly, beginner-friendly single-track trail that parallels the multi-use trail. I believe that you guys would be wise to learn about what I do as a company and others in public parks all over, which is called a bicycle pump track. I'd be willing to build it. Essentially, if someone here, including me, covers the cost of materials as taxpayers, typically they, you know, we're building pump tracks for $175,000 to $300,000, but we could do it much cheaper, and it'd be an excellent thing to consider adding. There's spaces for it. I have more on my list. Sorry that I'm taking a little time. Okay, so I think that's cool stuff, right? Bicycles are growing fast as a sport. Interscholastic cycling, NICA, is the fastest growing high school sport in America. Has been for almost a decade. Worth considering. People here like to ride bikes. There's not good trails for young kids and beginners. Regarding pickleball, I work with large-scale developers all over the country. They are all doing pickleball, and the courts are slam-packed busy all the time. So, what I like to see maybe an elevated berm, earthen berm, plus planting to further mitigate noise, because my house is right there and we walk out to the park. Yes, but you know, I have no doubt they'll get used. So yeah, that's a thought. You know, can you do some berming to mitigate the noise further? Preliminary thoughts on trail surfacing. Oh, it sounds like the answer was stabilized crushed stone of some kind.
And it could be, you know,
Well, I've done immense research and installed a number of them. Traditional stabilizers, in my experience, on anything more than like a 2 to 3% slope don't hold, and they're a waste of money. I think a lot of the trails, the multi-use trail with stone right now, could be fixed by rerouting them to be more sustainable. I mean, they're fall line trails straight downhill. They're still shown that way on this plan. If I can help in any way, I'm happy to, because like I said, we literally walk out our yard and use the trails, and you know, we can either reroute them to save money or find another solution, and I know a lot about all of it. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I just have a bit of a concern about this proposed new roadway coming by the pond in here. I mean, it's very wet in there. It's very wet, so that has to be studied, obviously. And then a question, do you see this plan as a net gain, the same, or net loss of parking spaces?
Oh, the intention is that it would be a slight net gain of permanent spaces, but there's room for, as I said, for event parking, and there's a lot of room. It's difficult, as I had said, it's difficult for me to judge how many parking spaces are there now, because A, people park wherever they want, and B, that none of the parking areas is to any type of standard.
I just want to piggyback off the, can you come up parking question?
Yeah, can you come up, please? Sorry.
Hi, I'm Brian Kornberger. I'm a township resident. Just, it's probably easier to show you. So on the map here,
like currently, I know you're talking about adding 10 feet on one side or the other. Currently, like when we are working at Field of Dreams, Dilts, the softball field, the soccer fields, and you have turnover with different activities, pretty much all of the parking from where the snack shack is, all the way along the side here on both sides, you have cars parked, and through the pickleball courts. I've seen that filled up multiple times. And I don't see that there's additional parking, but it's on the other side of the park, which doesn't lend itself to moving a lot of equipment and things like that over to, say, Field of Dreams, because you can't find a spot anywhere nearby.
That's something, yeah, you're right, that there are a number of things that
Just an observation.
Yeah, no, the existing stone parking area that goes in front of the snack shack and the restroom now is, once again, I don't know what, unrestricted. But I also found out that there's a septic field underneath that parking lot. So people really shouldn't be driving on the septic field. As we get into the next phases of this, I agree with you, we need to address some of that, right?
I see a gap there.
Yeah, the problem that we have all the time is that Saturday morning scheduling. I mean, our standards and the standards that we go by are 35 parking spaces per field. The problem is that assumes that 35 cars show up and 35 cars leave before the other 35 cars show up. That's not the way the modern scheduling is. They have a 10 o'clock game and a 11:15 game, and the first people aren't out of there before the second people come, and this goes back to that issue of trying not to pave too much of the park, because it's like, it's like the mall. They build them for the December 21st, 24th, and all the rest of the year, all you got is these empty parking lots. So the idea is trying to make it manageable, and that's something that we'll take into account.
Currently, I mean, cars park on the grass, I don't know.
Well, and that's it. I mean, they could still do that, but I think that was part of the other thing that I noticed, was that cars park on the grass, and then the next thing you know, somebody decides, well, why don't I just go out that way? And it's like, well, no, that's not. The idea is to separate vehicles and people, particularly in parks where you got little kids running around. I mean, I didn't, from my side of it, I don't know what the history is, but I have no idea why you would put the gazebo across the street from the snack shack. Now, a little kid's going to get his ice cream cone and want to go to the gazebo, and he has to run across the main drive of the park. He's like,
Well, I think the point, I know you were saying there's a septic field and, you shouldn't be parking on it, but they do.
I know.
And there's, like I said, that full stretch of parking spaces, when I've been there, it's routinely filled up, and I actually see fewer parking spaces now. And I see more draw to the center of the park
well, yeah, and
I think people want to be in that area, so.
that's understood. And here, well, I guess the other part that here again, from a park designer standpoint, the other thing is, it's a park. You're not supposed to be able to pull up. It's not the Wawa, you might have to park over there and walk to the field, but it's a park. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
All right, hey, and folks, I hate to be the mean person, but when you come up, if you leave, you're done. You can't go back to your seat and keep going, because it's just difficult for you. No offense.
I didn't know I was going to.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But while I was discussing it with you, just stand here, and that way.
Brian, follow the rules. Daniel Aiello, Township President. So thank you for all the work you guys put into this. A couple questions about the baseball fields. So when you regrade Dilts Field, are you going to keep the grass infield, or are we going to a total skin field?
That's up to you guys. I mean, we could talk about that.
Okay. The other question with baseball and softball, once the weather gets hot, those fields turn to concrete. We don't have a water source in the park. Is there a way to address that?
That's also something we can address as we go through. When I talked about the grading, the idea there and that's something we can talk about, but I don't know what the substrata of that park is. I don't know if it's stone, clay, rock.